So in this video, we're going to be creating the user, we're going to be submitting the user info that we got from the form into our database, and we'll be doing this from the front end to the back end, which is Laravel, and we'll be sending the info into the database. So let's get started. And the first thing I want to do is I want to start my npm command. That means I want to start a watch command. So if you notice, we haven't actually created the method. We've not created the red method for the form submission, and we're just going to do that right now. And we have this submit button right here, which says type submit. So we can just take advantage of this. And there are two ways you can do this. You can either add a click event to this, and this click event is going to trigger the save method that we're about to create, or you can just assign a submit. You can just assign a submit event to the form. So I think that's what we're going to do. So let's just see at submit, and here I want to prevent the default, and this is just going to stop the default attributes of the form. And if you notice, when you click a form, when you make a form and click a form, the form is going to try to reload the page and actually submit the form. But with this method, this prevent method is going to stop that from happening, and we can submit the form. So let's just call a function to trigger. Let's just say create user. So this is going to be the method, and let's just actually create the user method. So create user, and let's just see alert. So let's just test this out, and let's see alert. Okay, so let's try to refresh the page and actually click on the submit button. Loading, and so let's click submit. So we get the alert. That means everything works like we want it to work, and the page is not actually being refreshed. And yeah, so the first thing we need to do is actually send the form to a particular route. And if you remember, in earlier videos we created this resource route, and that means we have access to all the functionality that comes with the resource route. That means we have access to the user.create method, the user.edit method, the user.show method. So let's just use the user.create method. And if we should come over to our user and just try to say this dot form. Remember, in my last video, a couple of videos ago, I explained using the form object to submit your form data. So I think I can go back to that again. And I also explained what this / does when you use it in front of your routes. So if you're new here, I think you should go back and actually watch those videos, and also click on the subscribe button. So let's continue, guys. We actually have users ./create. So this is going to create a new user for us, and we send this post request to that route, and that is going to create it for us. So let's try this now and inspect our element and check our network and see if that actually works. So let's go to add and click submit, and let's see the route, and we're actually getting method not allowed. Yeah, of course, yes. So we can't use it this way. But what we can do is we can just create a new method. We can't actually use this resource, the user resource route. That's because if you should, this is how it works. It actually gives the resource route a name, says user.create. So this is actually what the resource do, not user/create. So this is the route, while user.create is the name of the route. So we can't actually use this. But what we can do is we should come over to our agents request and actually say Axios create user, let's say route, and say post. And this will be user/create. Let's just do this in a more fancy way. Let's just say account.create, and this will use the user create method, and that's all. So if you should come over to our user and let's just say change this to account. So let's just wait for that to compile and actually refresh. So let's see that in action. Yeah, so we get a 200 code. That means everything is okay. And if we go over to our user resource controller, so in our create method, which is the store method, this store, yes, I think it's store. Okay, it's create. So we're actually going to use the store, not the create. So in this method, we can just return the request and actually see that. And let's try to send that again. So we can see all the requests being sent, and this is actually a good thing because we can actually start working with what we have. So the first thing we need to do is to validate the inputs and see if they are valid. So let's just do that. I showed you how you can validate the input in our last video. So let's just do this, validate, and this will take the request variable and also an array as an argument. And let's just say the first thing, let's just see this form. We want to validate the user, the phone, the password, the email, the permission. The permission we won't validate the permission. We're going to validate the role. That means a user must have a role to actually before the user can continue. So let's just do all that, and yeah. So the first thing we want to do is the name, and I want the name to be required. That means the user must enter a name, and I want the name to be a string. And the next thing we want to do is want to validate the phone number. I want it to be required too. And the next thing we can do is the password. I want the password to be required. I want it to be an alphanumeric, and I also want it to be a minimum of, let's say, 6 characters. And let's say that should be all for now. And the next thing I can do is role. I can actually say role, and I want it to be required too. And the next thing, let me check this, is the email. So I want the email to be required, and I want it to be an email type and to be unique. and to be unique to the users table. I think let's check that out again. So let's try to send the request. So we got a 419 error which says token mismatch. So if we should refresh this page, name of non-property, of course. So we've been logged out. So what we can actually do to fix this error is, let's just come over to our route. So what we can do is actually use the auth middleware to fix this error, because anytime the session expires, we want to redirect them to the login page. We don't want to display this error. So what we can do is can cut all this and actually create a route group and say this should be a group, and this we have the prefix. No, we don't want the prefix, we just want the middleware. So let's just say middleware, and the middleware will be the auth middleware, and we can actually paste the route back here. So we have the middleware right here, and if we should refresh this, we are now redirected to the login page. So let's try to log in again. So we have the user, and if we should click this right now, yeah, so we got the errors. That means email, everything is working the way we want it to work. And yeah, so let's just try to fill this form and send it again. So let's say it's me academy, and this will be this phone number. So the role should be an editor. Let's just say the password should be password. So let's save this. So we get a 200. That means everything is okay. We pass the validation. And if we go over to our user controller, so the next thing we need to do is actually save this user. So to do that, it's actually easy. Let's just come to create a new variable for the user and create a new instance for the user. So let's just say user, and let's just say user name equal to $request user request name. So we're going to do this to the rest, and let's just say so let's say email, let's say phone, and let's say password. But we don't want to use this password like this, so we're going to use an encryption on the password, which is bcrypt. So this will encrypt the password, and I think that's all we need to do for this user. So if we should return $user now, we're going to see all those info. So let's see that. Sync page expired. We asked to log in again. I think you won't be getting that. I think it's my browser doing that. Yeah. So let's create that again. So let's say let's say phone number, a random phone number, and let's say password to be password, and let's assign a permission to that to be create user. So let's try that again. So let's see that now we didn't get the response we want, so that means we have to return this. So let's do that again and see that. So we've gotten the user info right here, and we can actually save all this information into the database right now. And before that, we need to go over to our user model, and we need to go over to the user model. So let's go over to the user model, and okay, we've done this already. So we need to specify the fillable columns in our database to actually get the information to be saved into the database. So if you should come over here and just run the, and let's just say we just run the user save method. So if we should run the user save method, this method is actually going to save it right now into the database. But before that, we actually want to get the roles that the user select and actually get the permission. If the user has been assigned a permission, we also want to save the permission to its own table. So to do that, it's actually easy. So to actually save the role for the user and also the permission, if you should go over to the Laravel permission documentation, you see a permission can be assigned to a role using one of these methods, which is assign role, and you can also assign give permission to the role. So to actually do this, we're going to be using a different way to do that, and we're actually going to say $user dot give dot is actually assign role, and this will take the $request role. That means the role that has been assigned to the user, and that is going to actually assign the role to the user that we just created. So hopefully this makes sense to you. And let's just say if for the permission now, if $request has the permission, that means if the let's say permissions, we need to be sure of the spelling. So these permissions, so let's go to user and say permissions. So if he has the permission, what this is actually going to do is going to check if its permission has been assigned to the user that is about to be created, and if it does, we're actually going to perform this function. We're actually going to execute the code right here. So to do that, we're actually going to use this give permission to, and we're going to say $user, and this will actually get the give permission to, and this will say $request permissions. So that's all we need to do. So hopefully we did it correctly. So if everything works okay, we want to return a response, and I actually want to return a response and say, and this will be a JSON response, and I'll just say created. Let's just say created, user created, and the status code will be 200, and let's just send this right here. So let's just test this out and actually see. So let's just try to create this user right now. So let's click save, and we get user created. So if you check our database for the user, yeah, so we have the user info right here, and this is the user we just created. Yeah, so this is how you create a user using Vue Laravel, and I'll see you in next video. But before that, let's check our roles, model as roles. So we have the user with the role of 3, with the model ID of 3. If we check our user, the user we just created has an ID of 3, and if we check our role model as role right now, the model ID is 3. That means this user has been assigned a role with an ID of 3. So if we check the role with the ID of 3, and that's actually the admin, I think, yeah, it's the admin. So let's check permission to model as permissions, and this particular user we just created with an ID of 3 actually has a permission with an ID of 3 and ID of 2. If we check the permissions right now, 2, and that's ability to create users. So I'll see you next video, guys. Everything works okay. So I'll see you next video. Bye.